Well, another painful year in films officially wrapped up. Another painful awards show that I think we all wish Ricky Gervais would have hosted.
You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg.
Now that the insufferable elites in our society are done congratulating themselves in self-masturbatory fashion, let's get some honesty in the room and figure out who actually deserved the praise they received and who didn't. Some of these categories are going to get glossed over or skipped altogether because I either don't care or I don't know how to judge the category in any real way, or I didn't even see the film that won the award. I'm looking at you, Best International Feature Film. Shall we start with all the acting awards?
Lovely.
Let's start off real hot with Best Supporting Actor, which was won by Sean Penn for playing Colonel Lockjaw in One Battle After Another. Now, Best Actor/Actress awards are difficult for me. I almost think they shouldn't exist, not because they're not important, but because it's very difficult to separate the performance from the character. What I mean is, for example, Brad Pitt won Best Supporting Actor for playing Cliff Booth in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That is one of my favorite roles of all time, but how much of that is due to Brad Pitt's performance and how much of it is due to Cliff Booth being written to basically be one of the coolest characters ever? In other words, how much of the impact would you lose if you subbed out Brad Pitt for another actor like Woody Harrelson or Johnny Depp or Matt Damon to go a little younger, or Kurt Russell or Jamie Foxx or Robert Downey Jr.? Maybe only Brad Pitt could have brought Cliff Booth to life the way he did. It's very possible, but it's really hard to say for sure. I'm not sure Tom Cruise, who Tarantino also considered for the role, wouldn't have won Best Supporting Actor if he had played the same role opposite the same star in Leonardo DiCaprio. It's rare that you get a role like Hans Landa, where there is seemingly only one actor who could have possibly played it. So that's my caveat to all the Best Actor and Actress categories. With that said, Sean Penn winning here gets a D+. An insufferable human played an insufferable human well. I'm not sure how many points I'm supposed to give for that. I don't give Ryan Reynolds extra props for playing himself in Deadpool. In all seriousness, he played the part fine. I don't think there was anything all that special about it. The problem is with the character, and in comes my caveat from the beginning, so feel free to take this with a grain of salt or disagree with me outright. Lockjaw is just such a ridiculous, pathetic character. A domestic military man who's obsessed with getting accepted into a cartoonish country club cabal of white supremacists, but has a weird humiliation fetish for a black woman whom he impregnates. You can see why the Academy would love that. Right now, the big boogeyman in America is ICE, and Lockjaw is seen at the beginning of the movie holding illegal immigrants in cages.
Who built the cages, Joe?
Let's talk about what
Who built the cages, Joe?
But from a storytelling standpoint, he's pretty useless. He's just a bad guy who gives the protagonist something to do for the plot. The story wouldn't be any different if Lockjaw was a different character, because he has zero impact on the development of the other characters. So yeah, it was a fine acting job, but it didn't elevate the story any more than if any other actor had played it. This category should have gone to Delroy Lindo. I also would have been fine with Benicio del Toro. Best Supporting Actress went to Amy Madigan in Weapons. I really liked this pick. It gets an A. Horror movies kind of had a moment last year, and Weapons being surprisingly good was a huge part of that, so I'm glad it won at least one Oscar. Madigan's performance is crucial to making that movie work. She was able to pull off the great misdirect, going from a frail, unassuming relative to the ruthless villain with no regard for human life. She did her own stunts in the third act of the movie, which doesn't sound like much, seeing as how it's really just a foot chase, but when you're, what would she have been, 73 or 74 years old when they filmed the movie? That deserves a little respect. Combine that with the story surrounding her, never having won an Oscar and going 40 years between nominations, there's not much to dislike about this pick. Usually when an old person wins an Oscar, it comes across as the Academy throwing a bone to them as they approach the end of their career, so I like that they were kind of able to do that, but also it be deserved. And now on to the lead awards. Best Actress was won by Jessie Buckley for Hamnet. This was the most foregone conclusion of any of the awards. William Shakespeare is a super interesting historical figure, just because of how little we know about him. That allows people who create stories about him to take a whole lot of creative liberties, and it's kind of a refreshing surprise in an age where we tend to view historical figures in the worst possible light through the prism of our own modern morality to see Shakespeare portrayed as, all in all, good. Borderline over the top, borderline manipulative to the audience, but I think it goes just far enough to portray a mother's agony in losing her son and feeling distant from her husband in the most visceral possible way. At times you almost feel like you need to look away, and it's clear that this performance came from somewhere deep inside Buckley. She said herself that it created a deep need for motherhood in her, and she got pregnant soon after the movie ended. Bravo, she gets an A, bordering on an A+. And finally, for Best Actor, Michael B. Jordan. This was honestly the aspect of Sinners that I thought was the weakest from an award standpoint. There wasn't anything wrong with Jordan's performance by any means, I just don't think it was Oscar-worthy. He played two characters, two pretty similar characters. But maybe that supports his case. He portrayed Smoke and Stack with subtle enough differences to make you believe they really are twins and not just the same person. But I think this Oscar win is a case of you played two characters and you're not Timothy Chalamet, who got himself into hot water for some non-controversial comments. Chalamet absolutely deserved to win this. Remember my caveat earlier? If possible, the award for Best Actor should ideally go to someone who not only turned in a great performance, but a performance that he or she was uniquely able to turn in. Well, Chalamet's performance in Marty Supreme definitely fit that bill. He played a character that is pretty much a horrible person, and still made it possible for you to root for him. That's a tough role to nail. Not to mention the fact that he trained for 5 years to become basically a world-class ping pong player. Who else, especially his age, could have done all that? You think Michael B. Jordan playing two very similar characters beats that? It also doesn't hurt Jordan that he's not white. And you may claim that I'm some sort of ist or phobe or something for saying that, but I would point you to the Academy's own diversity requirements for movies to be eligible. Being not white is something they absolutely value. This one gets a C+. Okay, before we cover the minor awards, let's grade the two Mac Daddies. Best Director and Best Picture. The former went to Paul Thomas Anderson, and I'm giving this a C-. One Battle After Another's direction is fine. The last car chase is one of the few times in recent memory when I feel like I was watching something I hadn't seen before. But there's a 25-minute stretch of this movie where PTA wants you to feel a lot of tension, except that the plot and characters have mostly all slowed down so that you no longer feel it. So the film relies on one of the most grating pieces of film score I've ever heard to keep you uncomfortable. It's too prolonged, and if you need to rely so heavily on 4 out-of-tune piano notes with no melody to keep your audience on edge, your plot and characters aren't doing enough. But the biggest issue I have with this win is that Ryan Coogler was just much better. Sinner's direction is much more fluid, much better paced, and it all looks more artistic while remaining down to earth. This feels like a case of we all think PTA should probably have this award attached to his career, and now is as good a time as ever to give it to him. Sure, it's not even his own best work, but who knows how many more Oscar-worthy films he'll make. Kind of like when they gave Leo his Best Actor Oscar for The Revenant, even though it's not in the top 5 performances of his career. And Best Picture went to One Battle After Another. F. No, that's not fair. F-. I took the contra position when this movie came out and said it slotted in at probably number 5 on the list of the best movies of the year at the time of its release. So pre-Marty Supreme. And the more I sat with it, the more it slid down my list. This movie is basically morality for Hollywood. Can I say that word on YouTube? I'll censor it. I guess I have to say corn, like I'm an idiot. I talked a little bit about it when I talked about Sean Penn winning Best Supporting Actor, but it is just a glorification of left-wing violence. That's why Hollywood loves it. And before you chalk up my criticism to me just not agreeing with the political messaging, 2 points. 1, I wouldn't love a movie that glorifies political violence of any kind in the current American political climate, where violence seems to be the order of the day. And 2, I have been and will continue to be praising Sinners constantly throughout this video, which is basically just as left-wing as One Battle After Another, albeit in a different way. No, Hollywood loved this movie because it was so overtly political and could basically be read as the good guys versus ICE or any other political boogeyman you want it to be. And because you can't really say that you love a movie because it glorifies violence against your political opponents, people would try to claim that somehow it doesn't. That Leonardo DiCaprio and his cuck child somehow learned the danger of a life of violent rebellion. Except that the movie literally ends with Willa, Leo's daughter, leaving to drive to Oakland to resist a raid, and she promises not to be careful. So the movie actually ends with Willa becoming a full-fledged political radical just like her mom. But you don't have to take my word for why Hollywood loved this movie. Here's a clip from The Big Picture, one of the shows in the Bill Simmons Podcast Network, explaining exactly why Hollywood was making the pages of the culture section of the New York Times so sticky over this movie.
This is the movie of the year, and the movie of the decade probably is a movie of this moment and of these really fucked up 5 years that we in America have been living in. Prescient and timely and just feels like it is speaking to the things that torment us on our phone every day.
Oh, shut up, you're so annoying!
Now, there's this word I learned when I was a kid that perfectly describes people whose phones haunt them so much that they need a feature film to validate their pain. Losers. I know why I don't feel like I need a movie like One Battle After Another. Because I'm a mature adult. I have a wife, I have a job, I have friends and hobbies, and I'm happy to report that none of those things involve me scrolling through social media for 5 hours a day, where everyone is battling for your attention and farming your engagement, and the easiest way to do so is by cultivating your negative emotions. So this is who One Battle After Another won an Oscar for, and again I'll reiterate, F-. Let's cover some of the more minor awards, if you will, before we get to the award category that needs to be added going forward. Best Animated Feature Film went to K-Pop Demon Hunters. I don't have much to say about this except that it was deserved. That movie took the world by storm like no other animated movie came close to doing this year. And surprisingly, it's not a horrible cringe fest. It's even got some decent music. This one gets an A. Best Costume Design went to Frankenstein. Sure, seems fair. I don't know crap about costume design, except that they look good. Best Adapted Screenplay? You think I read any of these books? Who cares? We're talking about movies. And let's just get the rest of the awards I have nothing to say about out of the way. Makeup and hairstyling, Frankenstein. Probably, yeah. Production design, Frankenstein. Sure. Documentary feature, don't care. Best sound, F1. Wasn't able to see it in theaters on account of getting married and going on a honeymoon, but I'm sure the sound was great in there. Visual effects, this is all the Avatar franchise exists to do now, so here's a bone. Best film editing went to One Battle After Another, and I'll actually give this a B. The editing was good. I already talked about the car chase, just think Sinners was better. International feature film, make one about how we're better than all of you at hockey and I might care. And most of the rest, I just don't care about. Oh, shoot, another important award I forgot. Best Original Screenplay. Sinners won this one, and it gets a B-. Sorry about it. I liked Sinners. I said when it came out it was likely the movie of the year. Just look at the thumbnail for the review I made for it. And then I saw One Battle After Another, and I said, yup, Sinners is definitely the best movie of the year. Sinners is good, but have you seen From Till Dusk Till Dawn? Or Let the Right One In? I just can't in good conscience award it for being an original screenplay. The only real original parts of it were the music and the racial allegory undergirding all of it. But that allegory is flawed and disjointed at best if you constrain it to just being about how black people were kind of screwed out of the rise of rock and roll, and downright stupid if and when you expand it to being about cultural appropriation more broadly. Or even evil if you go all the way to how minorities would be better off if they just withdrew completely from white people, which some people have drawn. Good movie, great direction and music, but any award with original in it, it's a bit of a stretch. Best Original Song, Golden from K-Pop Demon Hunters. I'll give this a solid B+. It's just not my thing. I wanted I Lied to You from Sinners to win, but I'm not a music theory guy, so I have no idea how to defend that beyond saying blues music good. Let's keep it right on the music topic with Best Original Score, which Sinners did win.
Tight, yeah!
By far the best score I've heard in years. Again, no idea how to support that objectively, but here's another A+. And now, before I go, there needs to be a new award category. I don't know what it would be called, but it needs to go to the movie that did the most to keep the movie industry alive this year. Because while the box office last year did increase from 2024, on a per movie basis, it continued to drop. Hollywood needs to acknowledge that it needs moviegoers for it to exist, and acknowledge the movie that got people to the theaters and had people talking about it with their friends. Basically, F1 should have gotten an award this year for more than just Best Sound. And there we are. Award season is over. Project Hail Mary and Peaky Blinders, The Immortal Man come out later this week. We can put the insufferable Hollywood elites behind us for another 10 months or so and see if they can create anything of value again.